into closed session at any time may be necessary under any applicable provision of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including the provision permitting closed session consultation with legal counsel. The President may elect to address any items listed on the agenda in any sequence. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance and
students, staff, and community into the district we are meant to be. Guide our decisions and words with integrity, humility, and grace. Thank you for the wonderful blessings of our students and staff. We thank you for keeping us safe from harm and focused on what is truly important in our day-to-day life. Continue to bless and watch over this community and help us to be a beacon of hope for the future. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. We will
begin with the superintendent's report. Dr. Wood.
Good evening, Mrs. Merkel and members of the board and community. We've got a number of celebrations from the last month. I'd like to start off with a celebration from Inclusive Schools Week. I would like to point out that we have an incredibly inclusive campus, where all of our campuses are very, very inclusive, but we do have some special activities during this particular week. I'd like to point out our primary and intermediate schools. During their PE rotations, they had a number of activities to give kids an opportunity to experience what it's like to have a disability of sorts. Like this is one activity here where one student sat in a wheelchair, another student pushed that student in a wheelchair, and they had a grabber. They had to pick up an item on the floor and place it in the basket. It was not easy at all. But the kids came together and they had fun. And it was sort of a challenge, but it was a wonderful, wonderful activity. And I'd like to actually read a few quotes from the students. We had a reflections time after these activities. One student said, after going through this rotation, that don't judge others, it's important to help them. You can do lots of stuff even if you have to use a wheelchair. These are from primary students, I should add. These activities make me think how people with disabilities might feel. One student said, even though people are different, we have to all stand up for them. And another student said, not everyone can do the same thing, but that's okay. So just really lots of love and support to include our students. So a giant special thanks for the time and energy, Lisa Scarpa and her crew of occupational therapists, all the speech therapy staff at both intermediate and primary schools, our award-winning vision specialist, Katie Nash, Shelly Gonzalez, our O&M, our orientation and mobility specialist. We had Coach Hodge, Mrs. Freeman, Daniel Dial, Catherine Johnson, Jessica Wallace, Miss Barbara, and Pip, and all the parent volunteers to help make this an incredible event. I would also like to say that many of the parents who volunteered and supported these activities were parents of our students with special needs. So it was a very, very touching, it was a really wonderful event. Additionally, another student's mother shared some of the activities and quotes on social media, and she actually was contacted by some folks in Australia to get information about the kinds of activities that we did. So that's pretty cool. Lavernia ISD is now, we're out there even touching Australia. That's pretty exciting. Next is the ATSSB Region Band. That stands for the Association of Texas Small School Bands. Our Lavernia musicians competed with 20 local schools for spots in the ATSSB Region Bands, and we are proud to say that Lavernia had 26 students that made a band and tied for the most of any of the schools that competed for spots. So our kids are in there. We had 15 kids that made it to the next round, and those 15 students will compete in Orange Grove, Texas on the 11th of January, and will try to make it to the state ATSBB band performing in February. The concert was phenomenal. I've been listening to jazz ever since the concert, so it was really, really cool. Cyber Patriot competition, this is huge. We had 5 teams. We had 2 Platinum Division, 3 Gold Division participate at the most recent Cyber Patriot competition, with one of our Gold teams securing the right to compete in the national semifinal round on January 24th. This team consists of Sarah Leal, Haley Novak, Brian Loak, Sean Pruitt, Jared King. A side note, there are approximately 2,600 teams nationwide that compete in this division. So our Cyber Patriots are just rocking it. And if you have not had a chance to go and observe our kids during a Cyber Patriots competition, it is something else, something you definitely want to try and do. UIL speech and debate. On December 7th, our Lavernia academic team traveled to Bandera to compete in our first full UIL tournament. 36 of our students took home honors by placing either first, second, third, or quarterfinals. Our speech team won first place overall. So congrats to Noah Recker, Mr. Kasab, and all of our incredible students. We very much look forward to all that's ahead for this group. For our athletics update, more exciting news. All district and all state awards were released for football and volleyball. We will be celebrating those students in January. But we're very proud to announce that over 75% of our athletes in both programs achieved academic all district, which means they maintained an overall average of 90 or higher for the year. That's pretty phenomenal to juggle all of your athletics and all of your academics and all the after-school hours and practices and for athletics. That's incredible. The Lady Bear, our Lady Bear basketball team, they are currently 16-5 and start district play this week. We finished runner-up in the Cole tournament, silver bracket champions of Navarro tournament, and 3rd place at the Bishop tournament just this week, excuse me. Didn't know that word could be said so many different ways. Helena Chadwick, Tranan Izworski, and Tierney Izworski, they're not twins, they're sisters, have all been named to all tournament teams. Boys basketball district contenders are Braden Denson, Tristan Osuna, Dylan Bennett, and all 4 of our junior high teams are currently undefeated, and we have very important home games this Friday, so get ready. We don't have very many home basketball games, so that will be really exciting. Boys and girls high school soccer teams have also been announced, and they posted their schedules, so we are looking forward to a successful soccer season as well. And then finally, the last item for the superintendent's report, it's Senate Bill 2073. And that is a bill, Senate Bill 2073 was passed this last legislative session. The Commissioner of Education actually stated that if districts provide less than 180 days of instruction for students during a school year, the district could opt to shorten the number of teacher service days. So that is a bill that we are talking about and having conversations as we begin our calendar assembly process for next year. And we just want to emphasize that whenever we are making calendar decisions, especially decisions that involve a teacher work day, a teacher length of day, that kind of thing, our teacher's voice is incredibly important to us. So we are listening, and we're trying to really get very clear on our district professional development needs, our campus professional development needs, and our teacher workday needs. And then once we get all of those pieces outlined, we'll marry that with our strategic plan that we have in the queue, so that we can move forward with some really good calendar options that everyone feels good about. We are collecting data and feedback. We want our teachers and our staff input on the calendar. We've sent out a survey. We only have 136 responders so far, but again, we are listening. We will continue to have face-to-face meetings. We will continue to meet with our District Educational Excellence Committee, or DEEC Committee, again, to talk about options for our calendar. We know it's important to start kind of as late in August as possible and finish before Memorial Day, so when you squeeze all that together, it takes a lot of people around the table to make all of those variables work. So we have some folks that are really working hard on that. But we want to empower teacher voice. So that concludes the superintendent's report for this month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wood, that was terrific. Next item, we'll get into the recognition. We'll start out with the FFA Senior Quiz Team, State Leadership Development. Ms. Simmons and Ms. Sullivan. Mr. Thompson.
Good evening. I am just going to introduce Nicole Sullivan. She's one of our great agricultural sciences teachers here, and we have yet more success with some of our ag science programs and contests, and I'm going to let her tell you about it. So this is Nicole.
Hello, and good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Excuse me for my voice, it might go in and out a little bit, so just with the allergies going on, but it's horrible. But this fall we competed in judging competitions, and we'll get more into that this spring. But we really focus in the fall on our leadership development events, and these events focus on public speaking, parliamentary procedure, general knowledge of the agricultural industry, as well as the history of the FFA. And this fall we had a total of 8 different teams that participated at the district level. And from there you have to be first or second to be able to qualify on to our area competition. And so from those 8, we had 5 qualify on. The other 3 that didn't, they were in the 3rd hole. And so we have a pretty tough district. And going into our area competition, again, we're probably one of the toughest areas in the state. And I'm not saying that because I teach in it, but we are one of the toughest areas. And several of you on the board, you've been through the program. You also have family involved in other programs across this area, and you understand that as well. But within our area, we did really well. We had several teams that were in the cry hole, the 3rd spot from qualifying to state. And it is the cry hole, because it's the hardest part. You'd rather be 4th or 5th, but we were in the cry hole in that spot. But the kids did an outstanding job, and any one of those teams that are in the top 5 in the chapter conducting event could easily be the top 10 at state from our area. So we had the senior quiz team. They qualified. They placed 2nd at area. When we got to state, they represented over 665 teams from across the state. And the thing that's interesting about FFA from UIL and sporting events is we don't compete against just 4As, 5As. We compete 1A all the way to the large 6A. And so that was represented up there. So there were 665 teams from across the state, which equaled 2,660 individuals. And we are really fortunate to have placed 3rd overall out of the state, which was outstanding. And the thing about it that shows how competitive our area is 2 out of the top 3 teams were from Area 7. And so it was very difficult. Of those individually, we had Dylan DeLeon, he couldn't be here today, Patrick Kessler, as well as Courtney Kitzmiller, they placed in the top 20 individually, and Kylie was 9th overall individual. So it was a great event for us. We're really looking forward to the spring. We've already started judging contests this past weekend. We were successful. We had a 2nd in Wool at St. Angelo, and we won a tractor tech contest on Saturday. So we're starting off with really good momentum for our spring competitions. So again, thank you for having us tonight.
transportation recognition. Ms. Cowley?
Good evening, Mrs. Burkle, Dr. Rudd, and Board of Trustees. We wanted to take a couple minutes just to honk our own horn, so to speak. As you know, transportation faced a few challenges at the start of the school year, and I wanted to take the opportunity to give Jason a voice to share some of the things that he's done behind the scenes to make things better for our students traveling to and from school.
Good evening. Firstly, I want to introduce our backbone of our organization, and that's Christine Wilson. She's a very not public face, but she is literally the backbone of our department. So just a few of our challenges that we faced in the last 12 months is, from a transportation perspective, knowing what we're dealing with is probably one of the biggest things. We gotta know where we're going, we gotta know who we're picking up. Well, our data originally, we had probably a third of higher of what our district was enrolled in. We literally had parents on routes, just from a data perspective. So trying to figure out logistically, how are we going to not only become more effective and more efficient, but also deal with the growth that we're sustaining, it was impossible. And just trying to get not only the data that we have to be current, but also accurate as well. Last summer, Christine probably sustained most of this pain. We had, out of the 3,500 students we had at that point, 2,500 of those were not geocoded on a map. So they were not living in a certain place. So having to go through and pinpoint every single one of those and figuring out why they were not doing so was extremely challenging. And it probably gave her at least 4 or 5 gray hair on my account. But not only that, but to also take that information that we feed every day and to get it to flow into our business to where it becomes more productive. To do that, we kind of set out a goal, put on a map all of our students 100%. We currently sit at 98, and it just recently dropped. We have been at 99, but I think we dropped like 1 or 2. So we're sitting from 2,500 to about 38, 40 students that we still have to pinpoint on a map. So a huge accomplishment just in that. And then to automate that to where it flows into our system on a nightly basis, and that's been a little challenging, but we've come very far. And then take some of the systems that we have been wanting to implement to make our business better, to not only become more efficient, more productive, more safe, but also to create a more customer-friendly, but basically it's take a step beyond customer service and just create an environment that's conducive for transportation of students. It just would be huge. But to do that, we had to cross over a hurdle. I thought it was a big hurdle. We were working so far as network infrastructure, and I thought we were there. It's like, no, we're not. So I was kind of down. Well, one quick conversation with Angela, and the world changed. We went from being locally hosted to taking that and being hosted by Transfarm, which is our routing software, and immediately opened the gates to things to come. So just kind of a big picture of how this data flows in. We take our student information that comes out of Texas, and nightly it drops into our system. And we know who's enrolled, who's not, and then we can easily place them on route the following morning. Well, Route Finder Pro, which is this intersection, let's see, here it is. Basically, this is the mothership of everything we do. So to look at different ways, how can we become more effective, more efficient, but also create an atmosphere for our parents and our students to actually enjoy riding and utilizing transportation. It was very difficult. So having that data set be absolutely 100% accurate is the first step. And then as we go through, some of the different things we can do is just fascinating. Right now with Viewfinder, this has been my biggest project, is to create life in real time. When someone asks, what do you have out on the road right now? Very difficult question to ask. With all the trips, with all of our routes going in many, I love our ag, but they travel faster than I keep up with. To be able to keep up with that and to be able to actually take that data so we can send it to our state report was almost impossible. Well, this system allows us to not only see that, but also see it in real time, but also be able to dive in areas that we need. If we look at areas that we're growing, what does that really look like? Well, one of the questions I asked the company is, I want to see every high school student that rides a bus and every high school that doesn't, and be able to see that on a map. Are we being effective? Are people actually utilizing our program? He said we can do it, and I can easily do it in a matter of 5 minutes now. So just look at that, different things. Basically, it's just a monitor of our health of our day-to-day operations. But the biggest thing is to be able to share that information out. One of the biggest things that I'm really looking forward to is be able to take that information, and as we're in a crisis, be able to shoot and communicate with our parents at ease. And that's something we're very eagerly looking forward to, but very quickly working towards, is trying to create a system that we can actually communicate with our parents. Because being in a bedroom community, when little Johnny gets on a bus and he's alone, parents are in San Antonio, I can understand. So trying to open up that means of communication to give our parents a peace of mind and create that customer service experience is huge, and is everything that we're going. So that's it in a nutshell.
Any questions?
No questions, but thank you for, all of you for getting all of that done, because that's huge when you think about the time invested to get it there, to the time saved from that date forward, where you can track and know exactly where a bus is at, or if you know bus number 23 is going to be 10 minutes late, you can call over to the school and say, it's late, we know it, sooner than later. So
To be ahead of life and instead of behind it, and be reactive.
Right.
Parents be able to look at that too.
Yeah, so that's.
So,
that's
so one of the biggest pieces that we're looking at down the road, and looking at how that's gonna look, is a parent app, that they have that information in their hand all the time of, where's the bus at? Oh yes, my student just loaded. Oh, they just got at school, and receive that notification would be huge.
That's amazing. But yeah, it's just, that it's part of the safety and security, it's part of just running the day-to-day operations of kids in and kids out. So thank you all for all that hard work and getting that system to where it's at right now, and be interesting to see where it goes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is the teaching and learning spotlight. Dr. Zemer.
Good evening, Ms. Burkle, Dr. Easterwood, members of the board. I love to do this segment, and I love that we're making it a regular feature of our board meetings. The best part of my job is to get to celebrate the teaching and learning that's happening on our campuses every single day. Last month, we got to have our little Go Public watch party and see David Chancellor feature our health sciences students in our CT program. This month, we have another opportunity that actually hasn't hit the airwaves yet, but it will soon, next week. As you can see up on the screen here, we had 20 students from, high school, right? We had 20 combined junior and high school students travel to the Fox 29 studios with Conrad Flegel, our choir director, / assistant band director / all things music and fine arts. And they got to record 3 Christmas songs that are going to air on Fox 29's Christmas morning TV show with Fox's first program in Rains Media. So that's a photo of them. We tried really hard to get as many of them here as possible, but it turns out that all of our students are just as busy as we are this time of year. So they're all working hard on other things and other events and other issues. But we do have one student here. This is freshman choir superstar, Destiny LaChapelle. She's here. If you give her a round of applause. Destiny, we're so proud of you. Mr. Flegel, we're so proud of you and the work that they did. Really, this is all about them. It's the work they put together. Fox 29 was thrilled to host our choir and include them among some of the very, very best school choirs across the San Antonio region. So we just are so proud of the work you're doing for our fine arts program. Thank you so much for again, making this a layup opportunity for me, and we're so excited to show off what you're doing. It's your hard work that makes this possible. So thank you very much.
Do you have the time?
Yeah. So my understanding, and we'll be, well, I'll wait till they're done. So let's give them one more round of applause. So my understanding is that the show begins at 6 a.m. on Fox 29 on Christmas Day. I've got to confirm that with Ernie Zuniga at the station. I'll make sure we get out as much information as possible about that. One thing that I would like to say to the community members who are here and to the board is so you can help me spread the word with our community. Due to copyright issues, they are not been able to post the recording on their Facebook page or website. I'm still working with them to see if we can get the file, like the video file of the recording, so we can have it, give it to our parents. With a promise we wouldn't post it either. But that may mean that we need to make sure we really DVR, really record the program so we can watch it. So be sure to help me communicate that to folks you speak with, and again, I'll get all that information out to our community this week. One last thing before I leave related to teaching and learning. We just learned yesterday, or Friday. We just learned Friday that Lvisd has also been selected as one of KSAT's cool schools for the month of January. So we're going to come back from the break. We're also going to get to do this again on KSAT. We're going to have the opportunity to feature. If you've seen their cool school spotlights that they do, they feature photos and some kind of exciting updates. It's a really brief, quick-hitting thing, but they run it like a commercial on KSAT. Then they'll have banners that'll push people back to our programs and to our website. So another really cool teaching and learning spotlight opportunity coming very soon.
And these outfits, were they part of the foundation?
Thank you, Ms. Jonstead, for that reminder. Also want to thank our foundation members. I believe our foundation president is in the room with us. So when I say thank you publicly to the foundation one more time, these beautiful new choir robes were the result of an innovative teaching grant that was written by our Fine Arts program and that the foundation graciously funded. So let's give the foundation a round of applause. For, as always, supporting our students and making sure they look their very best on Christmas morning. So thank you to them. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next item is public comment pursuant to the newly enacted Texas Government Code, Section 551.007. The board will hear public comment at every meeting and will allow members of the public to speak out on any agenda item posted for consideration by the board at that meeting. The board may limit the amount of time allotted to each speaker in order to allow the opportunity for everyone to speak who wishes to do so and maintain order and efficiency in this meeting. Anyone wishing to sign up must do so no later than the start of the meeting. Mr. McFadden signed up to speak and you have 5 minutes.
Members of the board, Dr. Wood, Mrs. Burkle. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jimmy McFadden, and I'd like to start with a disclaimer here. The words I'm getting ready to share with you are my own. They are not those of my wife. Because of the toxic culture that was allowed to prevail at her employment, she does not want me to be speaking here tonight out of fear of retribution and retaliation. I do, however, come here as a taxpayer, a spouse of an employee, a father of a former district employee, and a father of 2 current students. I understand that speaking to the board will make me a target. I only hope that my wife and children are left out of it. This is only my 2nd time to address the Board of Trustees. The first time I did so because I believed an injustice had been committed. When I addressed the board before, I shared that I believed we as a district and community were in a vicious circle, and you had the ability to stop that vicious circle and change our trajectory. You have failed to do that. So once again, I'm here because I believe an injustice has happened. I'm hearing that the current mantra around the district and community is that we're moving forward from Trent Lvisd. That is the past. We're moving forward. While that might sound warm and fuzzy, I believe that if that is the stance the board is taking, that is extremely irresponsible and poor leadership. You must look at the steps that were taken, the decisions that were made, the red flags that were missed that got us in this situation. You must do so we do not end back in the same situation yet once again. I'd like to state something before I continue. I do not believe the responsibility for this injustice lies with the entire board. I understand that there are 4 board members who are new to the board. I also understand that there are 2 other board members who have full-time jobs in San Antonio and young families that require most of their time and attention. I believe the responsibility for this lies with the board president. When Trent Lvisd first got to Livonia, there was not a single person I know who hoped for his failure. Everyone wanted him to succeed. His success meant the success of our community. To say any different is not only naive, it's harmful and divisive. However, wanting his success does not mean that one should have used a blind eye in relation to him. Red flags began to surface. Red flags that were noticed by many. One of the first red flags I heard about was him showing a text from you to some of his subordinates, and then talking bad about you and making fun of you to those subordinates. That's a lack of professionalism. Another red flag was him talking bad about some of his subordinates to their employees. In some situations, making up lies that the employees knew were false. And him having employees do projects, and when you liked them, he took all their credit. When you didn't, he gave them the blame. That is a lack of leadership. There were other red flags that showed a lack of judgment and morality. There's also the red flags of many of his top people leaving the district. And we'll get into that in a minute. These are just a few of the many red flags that were being seen. So you either chose to ignore the red flags or you were not able to see them. I know for a fact that you never reached out to any of those employees who left to find out what was going on.
1 minute.
Some of them have reached out to me, and I've reached out to the others. Some of the things that were shared with me were, I've never worked in such an unprofessional environment. I'm being asked to do things that are unethical. The culture and environment Lvisd has brought is toxic. I do not believe that the board president has our back, and I can't work somewhere where there is no support to do my job without fear of retaliation. An effective leader would have reached out to them. An effective leader would have made the corrections necessary. You did neither. I've been told by 2 former board members that they tried to reach out to you to address red flags they had seen and issues that had been brought to their attention by staff members. Both told me you dismissed them and would not listen to what they had to say. An effective leader would have listened. An effective leader would have investigated. You did neither.
Time.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to discussion report items. The financial report, Ms. Cowan.
Thank you. This is an overview of our October financials, so July through October for the 2019-2020 school year. In total, revenues are lower than anticipated year-to-date by $195,735. If you recall, the district in the past has not budgeted by month. We've never gone to that level of detail. So our budgets by month, I developed based on a 3-year historical trend. So this unfavorable, what I would call unfavorable variance, is really due to the timing of property tax collections. And the timing for how we collected so far this year has not been in line with the volume we collected in prior years for the months. So this unfavorable variance should level out, and you'll see that we did collect collect more in November than we normally would have collected in November. So, if you take a look at the financial report, you'll notice that our state revenues were higher than planned and kind of offset the local revenues being lower than planned. So the 195,000 total variance is a reflection of those two offsetting. I did want to just remind everybody that our state revenues are based on an estimate for average daily attendance that was provided in March of 2019. So when we get to the end of the school year, there will be a true-up based on actual attendance. And I'm just going to plug this concept that attendance does drive funding. So we want our students in class every day.
So the additional state funding at this point is tied to a higher daily attendance than what we were budgeting on?
The House Bill 3 state funding, yes, so we're receiving more from the state now in order to achieve a lower in-the-know tax rate per.
So it's going to be offset by local?
Correct, yes. For our expenses, we do have $733,000 in favorable variance, meaning it looks like we've saved some money in expenses, but that's misleading. As I mentioned last month, we are not reporting our payroll accruals correctly through October. That has not been corrected yet. We are working very closely with Region 20 to help us figure out the configuration in Texas that needs to be corrected. I hope to have this resolved by next month so we have a truer picture of what that looks like. And this is a view that I think everybody has been used to seeing, which is our expenses by function. And you can see our total adopted budget for the year, our July through October budget amount year to date, and then the actuals that compare in the variance. So there's three expense categories where we see a favorable variance. The first is payroll, and like I said, that payroll accrual will most likely eat up that favorable variance. We also have a favorable variance in contract services. A significant portion, almost $100,000, is tied to projects that were budgeted last school year that were carried forward into this school year. And we'll be requesting to use those funds to replace some needed HVAC systems. And then we do have savings in supplies and materials, and there's a very good chance that the majority of that is driven by timing. Again, the plans, we've never planned by month before, and this is just based on a historical trend, and so the expenses may come at a later date. I did specify here, though, if there is an opportunity to achieve savings at your end, that will fall to fund balance. Any questions?
When are you going to start really kind of looking at, is it going to be January, February timeframe budget for next year, and kind of drilling down into getting more detailed budget, I guess, going every department, every, of course, every campus, but then everything inside those campuses, the fine arts, the athletics, and everything, and drilling down. It's a little bit harder than I think they've been done in the past. Is that what is your timing on that?
I'm hoping to really start a planning process in February with the departments. What I'd like to do is, if you'll grant me your time at the end of January, that last week in January, to have a budget work session for this year, I would also like to present to you a planning calendar for the following year, and with some templates, and get your feedback on how the templates look and flow, and if you feel like it would be a good tool to use.
was wondering, just adding to maybe the spreadsheets or just a slide, is our 88 percentages. I believe that's available pretty easily. Just, so if we're December, getting it through November, just getting
Sure.
just the end of the prior month, just so we can kind of look and see how we're doing on, on a regular basis.
Absolutely, we are tracking that weekly. This figure here is as of December 13th, comparing that to the same week last year, our enrollment is down 20 students. And I did look at our attendance percentage. This week, we're hovering at around 95%. And we'd really like to be 97, 98%.
Yeah, and looking at cold and flu season and everything else and seeing, getting through January, February, then everything should be better.
Through deer season?
Yes, that too.
Guilty.
I do have one
Not
question.
yet.
About the Function 99, did we talk about once before about the shortage of the tax credits that we have, right?
Yes, and I will need to bring an amendment to you. I would like to hold off on doing that until we have a budget work session. I'm trying not to bring amendments every month, although sometimes it's avoidable. But this is really our fees that we pay the appraisal districts and the tax assessor's office, and those are decided on by those offices. And they collect from each taxing entity to fund their operations. And so we also are invited and notified when they have a budget hearing, when they adopt their budget, because their budgets do affect that fee for us. And it just hasn't been adjusted. Yeah.
So that amendment will be coming, but later, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mrs. Kelly, just, certainly want to thank you for all the hard work to you and your staff. I know you really been hitting it hard with this budget, trying to move everything in the right direction, get everything properly coded, and also your foresight, because, we're going to have issues from time to time, and it's all how we react to those issues, and I appreciate that foresight. You're looking ahead, and, months ahead is what you're looking towards, and I think that's important to get us, continuing down that road, if you will, of managing our expenses on behalf of the taxpayers. So again, thank you to you and your staff. And I know we're not done, still a lot of hard work to be done yet, but thank you.
So I got a question, kind of follow up what Mr. Davies said in regards to ADA. So when we plan our local, or is it state? So when we plan our state revenues coming in, do we base that on a certain percent ADA?
Honestly, I'm not sure how to answer that. That estimate is provided to the state through our PEMS reporting process. And I've not.
So they may make some assumptions, and they provide us what those budget numbers are most likely going to be?
So we'll provide an estimate for, we think we'll have an average daily attendance of 3,200 students based on, I would assume based on historical trend data. And then they'll use that figure to project out. We also have to tell them our property values will be this, or this is the preliminary property values, and they take all of that into consideration. So that dollar amount that we receive for each student is made up of both of those components. So depending on how much we collect on property tax will also drive how much the state gives us.
I just didn't know if we made some assumptions on what our ADA was, and we set kind of what those revenues coming in are, and we're seeing that they're going to be a little bit different than what we anticipate. How do we use that information going forward?
I'm not sure what the assumption was last year, but I can definitely have that conversation as we look at projecting this next year.
The only other comment I have, I know last month we looked at savings, and we talked about those savings, and we had some discussions about reallocating versus putting it in the fund balance. So, part of that discussion probably sometimes scares some people because they say, well, if I find some savings, they're just going to absorb it into fund balance. So that kind of deters from what we're trying to accomplish. And I think everybody knows from the standpoint of the current budget that we have, kind of where our fund balance is. So really it's more of you and your team, but also the administration staff that has parts in these, the principals of each of the campuses, to really look at, scrutinize, try to identify where those savings are. It can happen a few different ways. If we can find those savings and really start showing that we're making some progress. It is going to get tight. It is tight right now, and some of the decisions that we had to make, going forward with some of the things we historically do. But I would just encourage and challenge to try to find those savings and really float those up, and we got to be able to turn this wagon. And until we do, it's going to be hard. So that's all. Thank you.
And I think something along the lines you were asking about, keep getting us our monthly ADA, a conversion into dollars and cents too, what that equates dollars and cents wise for us. So when we have this much less than we had the previous, how much less are we receiving as a district potentially? And maybe that will impact some of the parents' decisions and that kind of stuff. Maybe we can come up with more incentives on campus to campus too.
Yes.
To boost that up.
Right, when Joey goes to the lease, they'll understand that.
But when you see the dollars and cents, sometimes you just see, oh, it's, our attendance is 95%. Oh, that sounds like a good number. When you look at, say, well, we were projecting, thinking it was going to be 97, so when we sit at 95, that's actually umpteen up dollars less, then people might think, well,
Yeah.
maybe you're not as tired as you think you are.
Yeah.
People go off to school or whatever.
Well, and then you think of the dollars and cents, but in real money's coming to us, but there's the dollars and cents of where the teachers are having to spend extra time. If a child is out for an extended period of time, or even a couple of days, and it's a test day, and they're out, and then they have to schedule a time to retest or do some different thing. So it's tangible dollars, but it's also the intangible of time. And, kind of getting the universal message across on that.
I'm excited, thank you, I'm excited for Ms. Sykes to come share with you our strategic plan, and part of that was a discussion related to graphically representing school finance for our community, and that's definitely one of the pictures I'm trying to paint in my head so that I can share that out, is how that one absence can potentially impact our funding. Thank you for that. And Mr. Booth, thank you for saying that. I have tried to share with our administrators, we are meeting with them quarterly to review their financials line by line, and I've tried to share with them that just because we save money this year or we don't spend it on something this year does not necessarily mean they won't have it next year. That's got to be part of our planning process, but I definitely don't want them to feel like we're just going to start taking without the dialogue. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that moves right into the strategic plan presentation. Dr. Wood?
Rick? Yeah, I turn it over to Ms. Sherry Sides.
Hello, good to see you. It seems like it was just yesterday we were here, and look at your vision. I love it.
It is awesome.
It's awesome, so, well, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I said it's like coming home. I don't even put it in GPS anymore. I know exactly how to get here, so I'm kind of sad that this is kind of coming to a close, but tonight we are presenting the final strategic plan. You have what we call our strategic plan on a page. We have a couple of copies. We have a smaller copy that I understand is going to go on the website, The larger copy might even be made into posters for the different campuses, but this is gonna be the map, the road map that the district's gonna follow for the next 3 to 5 years. So, we began our journey in June. We were here. Just as a reminder, you developed the beliefs, the vision, and you determined the plan categories. Then we had the 2-day retreat. I need to change that. It was 1 day. We did a long 1 day, and we developed the mission, objectives, and strategies. Had that in August. Came back, did a training of the action team leaders, which most of the leaders are behind me, or over there. We did that in September. That evening, we had a kickoff, and the kickoff was one of the best that I've ever attended. We had the dancing team, the cheerleaders, we had the drum corps, we had food, we had celebration, and it was really a festive night just to have a kickoff and to thank the action teams for participating. The action teams worked independently from September to November. We anticipate they probably put in about anywhere from 6 to 10 to 12 hours with their groups. We had the 1-day retreat, just like a couple of weeks ago in December, to finalize the action plans, to gain approval, and then here we are tonight. I want to remind you that strategic planning is not a requirement. We have so many requirements for the state of Texas. This is not. This is that one thing that the best districts in the state do, because it's a lot of work. Dr. Tony and I talked this afternoon. We're guessing about 100 or more hours were put into this if you take everybody's time. Here are the numbers. We had, from my estimate, about 150 school personnel and community members involved. The strategic planning team was around 100 people. We were expecting, when we first started talking about strategic planning, we were expecting about 50. Then we got to 60, then we got to 70. It just got better and better. And for the size of this district, for you to have 100 people in that room for that retreat was unbelievable. One of the things I want to brag about is that you had students involved in every part of it. We've worked with probably 60 other school districts, and we've had students involved with the strategic planning team, but never that many students involved with the action teams. You had students on every action team. The team 100, we had 18 action team leaders. Most of them are in the room, and I'm still good friends with all of them, right? The teams were about 6 to 10 members apiece. There were 11 action teams, so that's where I came with my estimate of over 150 people are involved in some shape or fashion. Here's our definition of strategic planning. The reason I share this again is that one of the things that we do is we'll be back. I'll be back in a year, and if something's not working, then we bring it to the strategic planning team and we say we need to tweak it. It's never stagnant, it never sits on the shelf, it's constantly changing. By the numbers, you can see you created the beliefs, you created the vision, the strategic planning team created the mission. There are 7 objectives, 11 strategies, and the very last component, all the way over to the right, are the action plans. You will see on the page that you have the 3 little squares at the very end where it says dashboard, 1920, 2021, 21, 22. Your superintendent, your interim superintendent, has said she wants every one of these plans to start sometime in the next 3 years. So probably the next time you see this document, you'll have a start date for these action plans. You'll also have owners. You'll have owners. We won't have action team leaders anymore, we'll have owners. Your framework, just as a reminder, you decided we wanted curriculum and innovation, human capital, safety, security, funding and finance, facilities and infrastructure, and then of course our communications and community partnerships. Here are the numbers of action plans. You would expect the most of the action plans, or I expect it to always be in curriculum and innovation. I will comment that your action plans are deep. They're heavy. They're going to take a while to implement, and that's good. That's a sign of a great plan. But with a total of 15 plans, it's still very manageable. We're not handing your superintendent 60 plans. We're handing 15 that can be implemented. So what happens next? We're hoping tonight you'll accept it, or you'll approve it, or you may do it in January. But there's nothing that says you have to. It's just a statement to the community, to those people who were involved that the board has accepted the plan. We've already begun talking about which ones to start immediately. You heard your CFO talk about she's already ready to go on the road trip to explain school finance. That's one of the action plans. We'll assign an owner for each of the plans. We've already started talking about evaluation, some type of rubric or SMART goal for each of the plans. One thing I didn't put up there, but sometimes the plans or the ones that are assigned become a part of goal setting for your administrators, goal setting for your superintendent. It becomes a part of your district plan, your campus plans, and then the updates will be held in the spring of each year. So we didn't talk about this, Dr. Wood, but I would imagine we'd probably look at March of '21 for our first update. So, what do you think? Anybody want to add anything? I know a couple of you were on the team. Was it a good experience?
It was a lot of work and a lot of great outcomes.
Yeah.
You know, to see it in print and see all, having listened to each piece, each team present,
Yeah.
and their rationale and how they got to where they were, and then we kind of hashed it out. It was agreed.
And made some changes. We sure did. And the students were up there just presenting. It's been a great experience on my part, and so wonderful to work with your administrators and your community.
Well, we appreciate all the hard work from everybody that made this document as deep as it is and comprehensive. And so I guess the next steps are to come up with those measurements and those metrics of everything. And one thing that I just kind of hit me the other day is just making sure that we hit this goal. I believe we have to have it posted by the end of this school year. Through HB3, the requirements. We talked about all of those with
Literacy,
Yes.
there are 3 board goals: literacy, the literacy plan and metrics, obviously, which will fit nicely with the
Yes.
curriculum innovation.
Sure will.
The our math literacy plan as well for elementary, and then CCMR, the college career military readiness piece, and then we're going to add a GT piece. It's not required, but we'd definitely like to have some sort of GT measurement.
So it's just a matter of breaking those down, getting them into an order, and knowing that this is one that's that hot spot that we have to kind of accomplish for sure this year. Get that one
Absolutely.
nailed down a little bit further. This is fantastic work. That's a lot of people.
A lot of people.
And that's terrific. We had that many people in the community want to come out and participate.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll also do the discussion in the action item, so next week. It's in the discussion report.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just put that into consent agenda in January. And then it'll get pushed into that, but appreciate that.
It's not in line with the word.
So the next item is the 2021 calendar development update. Ms. Grubb and Ms. Martin.
Good evening, Dr. Wood, Ms. Burkle, and Board of Trustee members. Ms. Martin and I here tonight to share the progress and the process that goes into developing the school calendar for the 2020-2021 school year. We've shared the timeline with you, it's there posted. And continuing with all the collaboration that you see there in front of you through the strategic plan and in Dr. Wood's visioning around making sure that we are listening to the voice of our staff. The first steps were all about collecting feedback and input from staff. So in November, the first thing we did was we had a calendar survey that we sent out asking for their feedback, Lvisd feedback on the preferences around the calendar options such as start and end date, PD preferences, where we place them, holiday breaks, such and such. And we also made sure that we included some places for some open-ended responses, just some specific concerns that teachers might have around the calendar that we did not specifically address in the questioning. We had 136 responses, I think Dr. Wood mentioned that. So there's, you don't always get the responses on surveys sometimes, and so we reached out to our principals and admin and asked them to visit with us and speak with their employees, kind of gather ideas about how they felt around the calendar. And we met, I think, with them twice. It was with the executive group, transportation, food service, everyone, and we wanted all the input, and then we also spoke with, like I said, with the principals. And we really wanted to know what their voice was in the whole process. We wanted to know what's working, looking at the calendar that we have this year, moving forward, kind of keeping in mind the whole collaborative effort around what we were thinking of in terms of the strategic plan and kind of keeping that in mind. So keeping all that together, trying to make it a big collaborative effort, the next thing that we're doing is we're going to gather that information and put together some scenarios. And then we'll take it to the DEC committee in, I think we said January, I think right around the 16th, we're working on some days to meet with that group. Kim, I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
And the DEC, if you don't know what that is, that's your district strategic, educational excellence council. Have to remember, because it's site-based meeting whenever you're looking at Texas Education Code and our policy, but we call it our DEC, District Educational Excellence Council. And so you have to have at least 2/3 teachers in that group represented. And then you also have community members, you have business members, you have parents, and then you have some of your other staff within the district. But the main part of that committee is your teachers, so that you can hear your teacher's voice and make sure that you get your input. So our hope is that we'll have parameters, we'll have our sample calendars based on all of the information that we've received from those meetings we've had in October, November, December. Bring those in, and we've also done some research and looked at different districts who have out their 2021 calendar already, districts who have their calendar from this year, looked at how they've done things that are a little more innovative, than others. And so we're going to bring hopefully 2 calendars to our committee so that they have a starting place, and then get them to look at all of the feedback from the surveys and from the meetings, and then work with what we bring in, and then hopefully leave with 2 options. And then our employees will vote on those options in February, and our hope is for the February board meeting to bring a calendar for y'all to approve.
So the DEEC committee, that's a standing committee that
Is your site-based, well, it's your site-based decision-making committee. I was trying to remember the site-based decision-making committee. And so we, you elect that committee, and you elect them every 2 years. And so this is year 2 of this committee. And so they'll finish off this year, and then we'll go through the process again. Campuses have their site-based decision-making committee, and then districts have theirs. And it's the same as far as the representation, the percentage of teachers that you have to have on both committees. And so that committee will work with us for the calendar, they'll work with us for the strategic plan, and they will also work with us when we get the district improvement plan rolling, and they'll help to approve that too.
So it's a great committee. They're going to be able to see all of the big picture, kind of all in one place.
And connect everything and see how we need to align to make sure that we can move forward. So are you saying that the people that were on last year are invited back to continue? Correct. Now
They
serve
serve
a 2-year term.
We did reach out
You
and
opened
said,
it back
you know,
up
kids-
to more, and we had more parents. I went to the calendar meeting last year. And I
Right.
hadn't been to anything earlier than that, but I went as a parent for that
And
one.
sometimes we may have a student, students who graduate and then the parents say, well, I can't be on there, then we have to replace them. Just like if we have staff who leave, we contact those principals and we say, okay, we need 2 teachers from you because you had, a teacher who went and became counselor or a teacher who left the district. So we make sure that we always have that balance that we're supposed
So
to
they're
have
not
those
elected at
percentages.
that point, they're just
They're
assigned?
elected, they're elected.
And who elects the committee members?
Your staff, your teachers nominate within, their colleagues, they nominate within their campus.
But
And then they
parents weren't elected.
No,
We
parents
just
weren't
got
elected.
to email.
Those-
If you were interested, you emailed,
Right,
and then
right,
we came to
right.
the meeting. Okay.
So y'all didn't need any new parents this year? I hadn't seen any new online.
I think we were okay on the percentage of the parents. We needed to get 2 teachers from one campus and then 1 teacher from another campus, I think is where we were when we totaled everything.
We reached out to the ones we had, so you get a chance to say no the second year, I guess, just because you said 2 years. We really want you to stay in for 2 years to continue the process, but we did reach out and they were allowed to say, I'm out or whatever, but I think we're set.
And I think
So
we're good.
once the nominations take place, so who approves the nominations? Who, is it you two?
No,
Who's approving the committee members?
that'll be at their campus level.
Okay,
They'll be nominated and then they vote at their campus level and let us know that they'll be serving on the
so
district.
who's voting at the campus level?
The teachers vote for teachers.
Okay,
And then if it's someone that we need as far as an admin or someone who's your other professional staff, they vote for those people.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So parents aren't elected, just the staff members are elected.
Correct. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that.
That's what I was trying to follow it.
And we have, I think it's about 36 to 38 total people on this committee. Any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
So the next item is the energy efficiency update, Ms. Cowley.
I'm really excited to share this little update with you this evening. Thank you. This is very high-level update, but I want to walk you through a few of the options that Mr. Jeremy Deck and I have explored in the last few months and a little bit of what we've learned. And then hopefully we can get some guidance from you on how you'd like to proceed. So we've met with 4 different companies, 4 different representatives, Zenergy, McKinstry, E3, and Lone Star. We initiated these meetings in hopes of finding a way to fund a project that will help the district achieve some efficiencies. So LED lighting is one opportunity. You'll see that common theme throughout. So Zenergy is the most recent proposal that we've received. They did an on-site audit, 3 days, and they were able to tell us exactly what work they would be able to fund with utility savings. They would be replacing all LED lighting throughout the district, all lighting except for the stadium lighting.
Did they consider the stadium lighting?
No, and it's not really typical to include that because it's,
The usage isn't as much as having all the
and I think the cost benefit just isn't quite there,
The gymnasiums as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And parking, all outdoor lighting, all lighting except for the stadium. And that would include, they were so specific as to say they would do occupancy sensors in locations where it made sense. Doesn't make sense in a classroom, but maybe it does make sense in a restroom. They also proposed to install regulators on our HVACs. It would not be an option to replace HVACs with a project like this, but they can install and I'm not an expert on the lingo, but there's a device they can install on the systems that we have that will help regulate how frequently the compressor kicks on, which should extend the life of at least some of our HVACs. A water regulator, which would also help control water pressure, and gas regulators for our propane. And then the other big piece to their proposal included refrigeration. It's a new way of measuring the temperature in the refrigerators, utilizing a gelatin substance that's more like food as opposed to just having a temperature gauge right at the door when you open it, to keep the refrigerators from kicking on as frequently. The thing about Zenergy, and the reason I put them first, because they're a little bit different than the other companies in that they carry the loan, they carry the risk. They don't expect us to go out and get the financing. They did a bit more of a thorough audit on the front end in order to make more detailed recommendations and to give them the comfort level of carrying that risk. And then they guarantee the savings, so if we were to fall short, as long as it wasn't because we added a new facility or something along those lines, if we fall short on those savings, they actually have to cover the difference, not us. And it is a 10-year payoff on the proposal. McKinstry first came out to do an on-site inspection in October of 2018. We reviewed their proposal with them. We've met with them 2 or 3 times since I've been here. They've been fairly persistent in communicating with us, which is good. But their proposal is based on a very limited inspection. They would require a more detailed audit to be completed if we went down that road, and it would be at a fee.